This week's episode of Film School Fridays is brought to you by ThatKevinSmithClub.com. That's right, man. If you can't get enough of the sound of my voice, then you could surf on over to ThatKevinSmithClub.com, join up, watch Wake and Bake 5 days a week, listen to Plus One, so much more. ThatKevinSmithClub.com. What are you waiting for? Join the club. Class is back in session. Welcome to Film School Fridays. I'm your host, Kevin Smith. Okay, there's a filmmaker out there, ladies and gentlemen, who for years people would come up to me and be like, you know who the Mexican you is? And I'd say, who? And they'd be like, Guillermo del Toro, man. And I was like, oh, I'm sure he'd hate to hear that. I met Guillermo years later. And one of the first things he said to me, and I'm not going to try to do his accent or his voice. One of the first things he said to me was like, so many people come up to me and say that you are the American me, which I thought was actually quite adorable. Guillermo del Toro is one of our era's greatest filmmakers, bar none. Dude's got an Oscar to his name, but that does not a great filmmaker make. You're talking about somebody whose craft is so on point, so beyond his peers, this peer included. He ranks his own category of film. You can know a Guillermo del Toro film distinctly watching the opening 30 seconds of it. It's a signature style and an interest in subject matter that appeals to genre enthusiasts, but crosses over to the highbrow, to people who would never watch a movie about a sea monster, for lack of a better description, having an affair with like a human woman, essentially a version of Creature of the Black Lagoon, man, and yet it won an Oscar. And that's not material. That's the material in the right hands of a true artist. To talk about his latest film, which I just found out, it shows you what an idiot I am, because I'm watching this movie going like, this is crazy original. And then somebody the other day was like, it's a remake, bro. And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, man, there's a remake. This movie actually existed at one point. And I just saw on Twitter recently, like side by side, quote unquote frame comparisons between the original film, which I guess is available through Criterion, and the present film, Nightmare Alley, which will be, from what I understand, on HBO Max on February 1st. If you haven't seen it, and I suspect you haven't, because this was a movie I believe that was made by Fox, and then Disney, of course, acquired Fox a minute ago, and Disney wound up in control of this film, and there's a lot of people online will swear that it was just unceremoniously dumped by the distributor. I can't speak to that. I saw some billboards, but I've seen this movie and I deeply appreciate it, but I don't know what cell was going to penetrate and break through the mainstream. Like I wouldn't necessarily fault Disney on that. This is one of those tough to sell movies. When this movie was done, I felt not that, hey, it's the same as, or mine is as good as, but I felt a kinship with Nightmare Alley that was like, I was like, oh, it's like Tusk, in as much as like when Tusk was over, people would ask me like, who's that for? And I'm like, well, for me, number one, and I don't know, I hope a few people. When I was finished with Nightmare Alley, that was the thought I had. And I didn't mean that dismissively, but I was like, wow, like that is, Tusk is like $3 million. And even that was probably too much money. This is a movie that's got like Bradley Cooper in it, Kate Blanchett, Rooney Mara, is that how you say her name? And some other, Willem Dafoe. And it's a period piece, and it's shot within an inch of its life and art directed and within an inch of its life. The costumes are insane. A long way of saying they spent more than $105 on this picture, man. Like, there was some money spent on this picture. So the thing that, like, when the movie was done, just guesstimating how much that cost, there was this feeling of like, well, I get it, man. I like making movies for like 10 people, but generally I do it inexpensively. I was like, this man chose his magic moment. This is the first film following his Academy Award, if I remember correctly. This was his, like, you can do anything you want. What do you want to do? And he did it. He chose to spend his currency wisely at the time he did, because I don't know how else this movie would have got made. And that, again, that is not to put the movie down. I love the movie. I was enthralled by the movie, and I'm haunted by the movie still to this day. So much so that it's the third episode of our this volume of Film School Fridays. But it is dizzying to think about the amount of people who were probably between, Guillermo pitching this and making the movie go like, are you sure you want to do this? It's a brave movie that only a filmmaker who's at their peak of their game and, commanding the world's respect and the cinema's respect could get away with making. That being said, I'm glad he made it, man. Remake or not, and I'm unfamiliar with the original. As I said, it's a haunting film, arresting. Not a mystery box, as the JJ people call that concept. More just a mystery and slowly unfolding film noir that I had no idea where it was going at any given point. Again, I didn't watch or see the original that this film remakes. So, this for me was a discovery. I knew that he was making another movie, and I saw the billboards when it was coming out and stuff. But, I was not like, first in line, man. It's not a Marvel movie, so I was like, you can wait. I'll get there. And I'm so glad that, like, they sent me an Academy screener, because one night I turned to Jen and I was like, there's this Guillermo del Toro movie. She's like, what's it about? I was like, I have no idea. But it's, Kate Blanchett's in it, and I listed the cast, and she was like, let's do it. And the two of us, like, I didn't get laid that night, because the two of us at the end of the movie were like, Jesus. The movie is arresting. It's an assault to common sense, because the things that happen in it aren't commonsensical. And it's insanely well made. And I don't know Guillermo enough to lay claim to something like this, but feels very Guillermo del Toro to me. Like, feels maybe perhaps the most, outside of Pan's Labyrinth, the most Guillermo del Toroist thing. In as much as it looks like he made something that he loved, or remade something that he loved. For this episode of Film School Friday, with the S at the end, we turn to a Guillermo del Toro expert, or at least as close as we got within the vicinity, coming all the way from Burbank, ladies and gentlemen. He's an artist that I've been working with. We did a Mallrats show. Oh, I didn't do a Mallrats show. There was a Mallrats show at Gallery 1988, which is Jensen Karp's gallery out here. That's wonderful space for paintings from usually local artists, but now artists from all around the world. But a very distinct subject matter, generally pop culture, cult films, things like that. Crazy for Cult series that comes out of Gallery 1988. They did a Mallrats show, and there was this gorgeous these Mallrats figures, and it was a Jay and Silent Bob, and they were rats. And there was a piece, like a two-dimensional piece of them together. And it was like, I loved it so much. I missed the figures. Somebody else scapped them up very quickly. I was able to get the other piece and fell in love with the artist's work. And the artist is here today. He does more than Rats. He has done me as well in Sideshow Collectibles. Has this series of plastic toys. Not just they make those gorgeous fucking sculptures, but they do plastic toys now as well. And they did a Guillermo del Toro, what they call Guru. And it was a cartoon version of Guillermo, and he had like 6 arms. And each hand of the arm is holding something that represents Guillermo in his world. Beautiful piece. And it was at Gallery 1988 Guillermo show. A full on, just flat out all Guillermo del Toro show. That was curated by the artist and our guest today. A guy who knows a fair bit about Guillermo and knows a fair bit about art. We're going to get to know him and then dive into Nightmare Alley. Nightmare Alley. Welcome to the show. One name, kids. Branded like a motherfucker, man. The only name in art that matters. One name. Chogrin. How are you, my friend?
Thanks for having me, Kevin. That was quite an introduction. I feel very, very special and humbled.
Tell the kids who you are. Give them your bona fides so they know where you're coming at with all this Guillermo stuff. You're not just a guy who's like, I like Guillermo del Toro movies. Obviously you are, but you're more than that. Tell them about the show that you curated and the Guru.
So my name is Chogrin. I'm an artist and storyteller. I've been working in the industry for the last 10 years. And, you know, I've been inspired by artists like you, Guillermo. And it's funny, before we get into it, I just want to say that it's hilarious that people said that you were the Mexican Guillermo, because that was the first thing I wanted to say at the beginning of this podcast, is that both of you are so alike that it would be amazing for you to have them on the podcast, just for the fact that you are both ex-Catholics. Yeah. And you both get high on your own supply.
Very true. The only difference between us, other than the geographical one, is he is crazy fucking talented. Well, born to be a filmmaker. Not just a filmmaker, but visual stylist, because it goes beyond film for him.
Yeah. You're a different kind of filmmaker, though. I mean, I just think you have the heart. You got to have that passion, because otherwise, you know, if you don't have that passion, you don't make it in this business.
It's true. But he's got the heart, and he also has the eye, you know, or the eyes that are on hands that cover somebody's
what he likes
face.
to call eye protein.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, because, you know, he says that in his films, and a lot of films have eye candy. He likes to put eye protein.
Eye protein.
Where it's kind of like you're telling a story, but without saying anything. You know, you're putting like little props in the background that are kind of either adding to the character or just like telling a whole other story in itself, like another layer. So
I met him years ago, probably a decade back. Probably around Pans, maybe a little before Pans even. Jeff Robinov, who used to run Warner Brothers, was having a party for his kid, and me and Jen stopped by, and Guillermo, I think it was when he, you know, dropped weight, because he's like me, he's gone up, down, and stuff. So it was one of the first times where it was like, hey, man, what happened to half of you and stuff? So I met him, and he like smoked right over to me and was so chatty and cheerful. And that's when he told me I'm the American. They tell me I'm the American you.
Oh, that's awesome.
Such a lovely dude. And, you know, we chit-chatted for like 20 minutes there. And you could tell, I was like, oh, my God. And I even said, I was like, I do a podcast, man. You got to come on. And he was like, I would love to. And that was, mind you, a decade back. Like, time flies. Yeah, he's got a similar energy. You know, there was a very like, wow, it's kind of like looking in a mirror effect to it, right down to even the shape of us and the facial hair and the like, you know, when we speak about movies and cinema, it's with passion. He has a lot more erudition than I do. He's like a Quentin in as much as like he sees, I mean, he must have, like here, proof positive, I didn't even know Nightmare Alley was another movie.
Yeah. I think both of you, I mean, there's a reason why I'm doing a Guru of him and you. I mean, and I think there's a compliment right there. Yeah, the first movie that I saw of his in theaters, and this is how I both got into Hellboy and Guillermo del Toro, was Blade 2. I saw Blade 2 in the theater.
That's right. That was him. Now, who did Blade 1? Not him.
Steve Norrington.
So he comes in and takes over Blade 2. And,
Yeah.
the Blade 1 had the shower scene that everybody remembers, but Blade 2 had this like crazy action.
It had the Reaper, and it was almost basically, from what I remember watching the special features, it was kind of like his movie to prove that he could do Hellboy. He could do a superhero movie.
He wanted to be like, look, because this is the one I really believe in.
Yeah.
I want to do Mignola's Hellboy, but look, I could do this.
And this was 2002. Like the superhero movie.
20 years ago.
Yeah, I know this year.
During the dark period for the superhero movie,
Right.
like between Batman and Robin and the resurgence of like, say, X-Men. Like I put Blade as the beginning of the resurgence of the comic
the first one,
movie, but by the time you get to X-Men, Spider-Man, that's when it's like Spider-Man. That's when you get to like, oh, this shit's here to stay. It's no longer a fluke or a one-off and stuff. But that's true. I forgot that he did Blade 2, and it was just so visually arresting and like it. I'm certainly not lowering one to raise one to lower another, but in a world where you're like, all right, you're not the director of Blade, the original Blade, you're stepping into it, and you already got a filmmaking career of your own. You've already established yourself.
Yeah.
I remember that movie popping. Yeah. And I remember at the time people being like, oh, like Blade 2 is actually really good, man. And the director is who's doing it. That's what's, where it's coming from.
It was very comic booky, as opposed to the first one. The first one is rad, because it's got like still has exploding vampires and stuff. Like Guillermo took from everything from the first one and put it like on speed dial.
Right.
And also, adding, I don't know if you ever got into his series, The Strain, but he loves every Guillermo del Toro movie will have like a big anatomy or dissection thing. So he loves like creating these kind of creatures. So the vampires in the movie were called the Reapers, and they're like, super intricate, like their whole mouth opens up. Fast forward from watching the theater, and then I saw the special features on DVD, the Blade 2, because that's the only reason you'd really to buy DVDs back then, was because of the special features. I remember the Dogma one.
There were many film schools, man. Like there's a whole generation
Rodriguez,
of kids who grew up watching the special features, particularly the Lord of the Rings features.
Oh,
who are like now filmmakers and work in the field.
Yeah. So in those special features, he was talking about Blade, but half the time he was talking about Hellboy, and he very very like there's little Hellboy Easter eggs, like Norman Reedus is wearing a BPRD shirt like in the movie. So it's kind of, so I was like, oh, who's this like a demon who's wearing goggles? And he immediately went to the comic book store, and that kind of started a whole love affair between Del Toro and Mignola. So now, like, I never had a superhero that I could call like my own. Like everybody's like, oh, my favorite superhero is Spider-Man. For me, Hellboy was that moment. I was like, this is my guy. So that's the guy that I exclusively collect superhero wise.
And and oddly enough, it was like a filmmaker who got you into the character.
Yep. Yeah. And I actually, that's one of the things I tweeted there was a tweet back and forth between me and him, and I said, congratulations to Nightmare Alley, and I just said, now I'm still crossing my fingers for Hellboy 3, finish off the trilogy.
He wants to go back and do the one with Ron, right?
I mean, I don't know if he does, but I want it. So, I mean, we live in an age where we got freaking Ghostbusters 3 in a sense. So I'm not going to say it's not possible. Anything's possible now, because I thought after the 2016 Ghostbusters, we're like, oh, we're done.
Yeah,
that's it.
We'll never see it again.
And then here we are.
And then now it's like, oh my God, they can keep going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your bona fides in art. You're from Philly area, and you went to where? Where's school?
I went to the University of the Arts in Philly, which is where VUSQ, another VUSQ alumni, teaches there. Dave Deneen.
Dave Deneen is the guy who, if you ever looked at Buddy Christ, you're looking at the face of Dave Deneen.
Yeah.
He was the artist who was Rat Face. Robert Holtzman, our production designer, tapped him, his friend Dave Deneen. He said, hey man, can you make the Buddy Christ statue for us? This is what it has to look like, based on the script. And Dave Deneen went out and bought this old marble statue of Jesus or
Oh, that's right.
Mary.
He cut off the arms.
He cut off the arms and the head, which is almost sacrilegious.
Because his face, it's literally Dave.
And it's Dave's face.
Yeah.
He basically sculpted his own face as the face of Jesus, the winking Jesus buddy Christ.
Yeah.
That is the face of Dave Deneen. You can search the picture online.
Yeah.
I posted it.
It's also in your book.
It's in the book as well. That's right. Secret Stash. It's hysterical because there's Dave standing right next to the buddy Christ doing the same exact pose. Yeah. And you can see he just made himself Jesus. Adorable. So he teaches at that school.
Yeah, I believe so. Last time I checked, I mean, now I'm getting to the point where I'm like, oh, I've been away from school for a while.
For a minute. But he used to at that point.
He used to, yeah. I think he was in film and animation. I never had the, I heard he was just an awesome teacher. So in a weird way, I felt like, I missed out. But I always heard the stories. I'm like, oh yeah, he did Buddy Christ and Dogma. And then also Ted Biaselli, who I don't know very well, but I interacted with him here and there because we're both huge Motu fans. He went to UArts as well. So,
back in the day, like you knew him?
No, I didn't.
You interacted
just from being in the industry, and I was like, oh, like alumni, because sometimes they'll send a newsletter. I'm like, hey, this guy's doing this, and I was like, oh, cool. So I was like, dude, like you're like part of the responsible for bringing Masters back. And by the way, let me go on record that your Masters is amazing.
You Doug, thank you.
I love that.
It's always nice to hear that.
Coming from a kid.
Look at the rings. He's got a fucking Skeletor ring, has a Gray Skull ring, and it's a fucking He-Man ring.
Yeah, this is Frankenstein, but these two are I got
Gray Skull and Skeletor.
Han Cholo jewelry.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, Han Cholo. Yeah.
Fucking gorgeous. Ted went to school there as well.
Yeah.
When did you come from the East Coast to the West Coast? You've been out here in California how long?
Oh my gosh, now more than a little bit over 11 years.
What did you come out for?
I came to work for animation. I had originally, when I was going to school in Philly, I went to study illustration, but I knew that my end goal was to be able to tell my stories through animation and storyteller film. So
and you got a style, your specific art style. Presumably one day you make your own cartoon, it looks like that, right? It's going to look like your stuff.
Yeah, and my style, I should say, is very much inspired by the Fleischer cartoons, old Rubber Hose animation, Abai Works, who I got to give a shout out to because he doesn't get enough love. He was the co-creator of Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you say his name?
Ub.
I
think it might have been pronounced Oob.
But I always thought, like, when I read it, because I believe it's spelled UBI.
Yeah.
I always thought it was like UB, like UB.
Yeah.
But he's the guy who co-created Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, and he was literally, because they lost the rights to Oswald, he was literally animating, I believe everybody knows it's, Steamboat Willie, but I think it was Plain Crazy. The one that he was still working at Universal, like under contract, and he was animating I think something ridiculous, like 700 pages a day.
Oh.
So he made. Every time I go to Disneyland, I always want to be like, there should be a statue
of that guy.
Because especially in California Adventure, it's Walt from the 1920s. I'm like, should be right next to him.
And also, it's like in a world where they brought Oswald back and made a big fucking deal about like he's back. It's like, all right, how about you? Fucking honor the guy, the human being. There's a of course, Walt Disney everywhere, big Walt Disney statue in Disney World and Disneyland. But in at the Disney lot, there's a Roy Disney statue.
Yep.
And you would feel like, he got up, man.
He got one. That's the statue that's featured in Walt Disney World. He got one because he's the one that finished the park, the Florida park for Walt. So it was kind of like finishing his dream, But yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, and that's actually something I said it. If you ever do something more with movies origins, I would love to see a kind of like a Nancy Goldruff and somebody else that co-created and had a falling out. That'd be kind of amazing.
Genius. Did Disney and Ub have a falling out?
I think they did because Ub wanted to kind of grow more as an artist. There's actually a whole book that was released by his son and his granddaughter, who's an amazing documentarian herself, Leslie Iwerks. And she, like every documentary you've seen on Pixar or the Imagineering, that's all done by her. So Ub kind of sort of did his own thing for almost, I want to say 10 years and then came back to Disney. But can I swear?
Yeah,
okay.
Fuck yes.
So the motherfucker created a lot of the innovations that Disney uses today, like the 360 camera, like that. Remember that space where you could go into a room and you could like see a thing in 360. He invented that kind of camera. He invented the Xerox method for 101 Dalmatians. That's why in 101 Dalmatians you can see like the pencil line of the animators.
Yeah.
So which made it kind of like look a little bit like, I don't want to say cheaper, but it kind of gave the animators liked it because they could see more of their
their work
their
in
hand.
It also give it more personal touch.
So he came back not as an animator, he came back basically as an inventor. So he kind of had like, he was a guy that always challenged himself. Once he mastered something, it was like next to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. He was just one of those guys that was just like amazing, just like he had that spirit of like next. So he did go back to Disney, and him and Walt did have like a reconciliation.
Reconciliation.
Thank you. So yeah, he's a big influence for me. He had his own characters, Flip the Frog, Willy Whopper. Those are his styles, a huge influence on me. And then besides and Popeye, E.C. Segar, all those guys. But besides that, I have a huge influence on Japanese animation because growing up,
vice versa, Japanese animation has a huge influence on you.
Yeah, yes. Guys like Osamu Tezuka, which are kind of like, they were influenced by classic Disney, and it's like, and now we're influenced by anime, so it's like a big circle.
All right. Yeah.
But growing up in South America, Ecuador, I'm so glad that, I was exposed to a lot of that stuff because we were getting...
You grew up in Ecuador.
In Ecuador, yeah. I grew up in Guayaquil. I was born and raised in Guayaquil, Ecuador, and then I moved to Philly when I was like 13. So...
Were you... you grew up fluent in English as well?
My mom was American, so I was one of those kids growing up that nobody could understand what the fuck I was saying, like until I was like maybe 4 or 5, where I was like, oh, this is English and this is Spanish.
You had to separate the two.
Yeah,
oh my God, could you imagine? You don't have to imagine. You're like, bro, I lived it.
Yeah. So living here in LA is fucking great because it's like, oh, it's like a combination of both those worlds, like,
right?
Both Philly and Ecuador. So and the weather's great.
So when you moved to like Pennsylvania, there was no like, oh man, I didn't even know how to speak. You could fucking communicate freely.
There were some barriers like slang,
right.
Like I curse words and things like that. But your movies helped me with that. So.
How were the folks in the Delco area to an Ecuadorian 13-year-old boy who moves into the neighborhood?
Well, I didn't. Well, I should rephrase. I moved to Philly when I went to college. So the town that I moved into was like this. I like to call it the Shire because basically there's like 3 things to do: mini golf, bowling, and the theater.
Right.
I think every small Americana
you can see hobbits doing all that shit.
So there's a very heartwarming feeling every time.
What is the name of the town?
Danville, Pennsylvania. I went to Danville High School, and then I went to University of the Arts in Philly. I lived with my uncle because he lived in Philly. So it was and going back I lived in the city in Ecuador, so moving into Philly later on felt more like home.
How weird was it then to go from a city to like Danville? The Shire, if you will.
The Shire. Yeah. I think because of the, it was a period of time where, it was like that coming of age, 13. I'm just very glad and thankful for my mom for just encouraging me, like to keep me busy because, it's that age where you could like either go like, I don't know, crazy and I was just, I was going through a lot and, I didn't realize like making new friends and all that stuff. So I was just a nerd. Like I was the kid, like, there would people be getting drunk at their houses, like, hey, my parents are gone, like, throwing a party. I'm like, sorry, I can't make it. I got to tape Dragon Ball Z at 4. And I like to tape it without commercials.
I have to sit there and pause.
VHS. Yeah. So I was that kid and, going to art school, yeah, I just kind of, met a bunch of other mutants, like myself. And then I came out to the big capital of mutants here in LA.
Here we are, Mutant Central. What animated shows did you work on when you came out? You worked for Cartoon Network?
Yeah, I worked on Adventure Time and regular shows.
Oh, 2 shows that everybody hates and nobody ever heard of. What was it like working on Adventure Time?
It was fun, man. I mean, I had seen the pilot before it became at the Adventure Time. So I was already a fan. And so coming into it, like to be actually part of the production, I started out as a PA. So, and then I worked my way up to production coordinator. And then I actually landed an artist position, joined the animation union, all that jazz, and became part of regular show. But the whole journey was just kind of amazing because, being in the studio, you get to meet different people. Like there was one time, I'll tell this story because I know you'll appreciate it. One time I had to give a guided tour around the studio to a bunch of students, and coming out of the recording studio is fucking Mark Hamill.
Oh shit.
And it was like around the time when they were about to shoot Force Awakens, so
Right.
he was like all trim and like and he had like you could tell he had like a renaissance,
Right.
he was
looking his best.
yeah, and then he didn't know me at all. Like I had seen him a couple of times from recordings, but he literally stopped, pointed, he saw that I was about to start giving a tour, and he said like, this guy right here, he's gonna give you a great time. I was like,
Lord.
such, and then I literally turned around to them. I was like, the tour is not going to get any better.
Yeah, that was the highlight.
That's
kids.
the highlight, kids. So it was kind of like a moment, like, hey, everybody, Mark Hamill, applause. So I've had little moments like that. It got into me a lot of really cool people through the voice recording. Got into me a lot of heroes. While being out here, one of the side things that I did that I still do every once in a while is art galleries, and through art galleries is where I've met a lot of like different artists that I collaborate with. I got to do that, curate the Guillermo show, and in that Guillermo show, I did this piece called Guillermo del Toro, and eventually that ended up being a toy. I pitched it at Sideshow during under their Unruly banner, and which is basically kind of like leaning towards independent artists, and
That's really cool.
and then they were like, hey man, who else do you like that would be a good guru? And you were like immediately on top of those. I was like, Kevin Smith and Tim Burton.
Nice. That's good company.
So Tim Burton's probably not going to happen because I don't think there's even a Funko Pop of him.
Is that right?
Yeah,
You don't go for that?
Because that's usually how it go. Like I'm like, if there's a Funko Pop, then there's a chance.
Right.
So I was very happy that when I pitched you, and we got to make it. My only I think it would have been unbalanced, but I wish I could have put a cock knocker hand. But I think it would have been too
The piece is gorgeous. They could see a 2-dimensional rendering of it.
Yeah.
Like they could buy the print at Sideshow Collectibles.
Yeah,
I don't know if they're still there or not.
Yeah. The print is kind of, I think it's not it's like, you can get Guillermo del Toro and the print there. They're still available. The print is all me, my 2D design, and then from that 2D design, a sculptor came in, and I kind of gave as much notes to my liking, and then they were like, okay, approved. And then there's going to be like 3 variants coming out. I don't have dates, but there's going to be an edible edition, which is going to be, it's called Readable, which is red.
Right.
There's going to be a dope variant, which is going to be flocked. It's all going to be all green, which is actually, I want to put next to my Moss Man. And then the regular edition, which is the Clerks black and white edition.
Black and
so
white.
that's the
Monochrome
that's
thing.
for me. Yeah, that's the one I'm gonna have next to my Guillermo. So
I'm gonna have all 3. I'm a big Kevin Smith fan. Hey man, let me just jump in here for a sec to remind you, jayandsilentbob.com, ladies and gentlemen. You want to buy anything Clerks related, anything Jay and Silent Bob related, anything Kevin Smith related, go to jayandsilentbob.com. Now back to the show. When you curated the Guillermo show, did he go?
Yeah, he went. Yeah.
So did you get to meet him at the show?
I had met him a couple of times, like at smaller venues like Dark Delicacies, the horror bookshop in Burbank. They're great. He did a signing there. So over the years, I just kind of like grew this rapport with him, and then after he actually owns the original one that I did for the art show. So then years later, through like Twitter, I was like, hey man, do you mind if like we make this into a toy? He's like, fine by me. So it kind of went with a blessing like that. And I think, then got approvals elsewhere, but yeah, he's great. And I also did a children's book based on his childhood called Kid Del Toro.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Where can they find that?
That's published through Little Libros. So, and now I feel bad for swearing because it's a children's book.
Oh, the poor little Libros.
Yeah.
That's adorable, man. What is it called?
Kid Del Toro.
Kid Del Toro.
Yeah.
I think, if I remember correctly, my first exposure to Guillermo's work, Guillermo directed Minotaur, didn't he?
Chronos.
Chronos.
Yeah. Which is cool because you
1994 Sundance.
Yeah, he did. I think his came out in 93, but you were, you guys were like basically like around the same time. It was, yeah. But yeah, he did. Chronos was kind of his, like, that everybody started paying attention to.
Yes. Like it was around the same time as Clerks. Like I remember, because I was working at Miramax, and then he wound up doing Mimic at Dimension over the course of what felt like a fucking decade. Because Bob kept going like, we get it, we work it. And he kept going back and making Guillermo reshoot. Like I always felt bad for Guillermo, because it's like, you're taking like one of the premier talents and you're treating him like a workhorse.
But you know what? He said that because of that experience made him learn to say no.
Is that right?
To say no, but it also like taught him how to like basically just kind of work like with somebody gives you notes, just kind of like how to like, I think work doing dolly shots, getting more like doing experimenting and things like that. So then he took that experience, and because I think they wanted him, I think, to do Blade 2 immediately after that. And he knew that he needed to make like a personal movie for himself first before he went on to do something. So he did Devil's Backbone right after that.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about Devil's Backbone.
And the Devil's Backbone, well, we'll get into this, but Devil's Backbone and Pan's Labyrinth are kind of companion films.
Are they really?
Because they both take place during the Spanish Civil War.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Good point.
And what's crazy is that the author of Nightmare Alley, William Gresham, got the inspiration for Nightmare Alley during the Civil War, the Spanish Civil War.
So Nightmare Alley begins its life as a book first?
Yes. Yeah.
Then a feature?
Yep.
And then years later...
the Del Toro's movie. Yeah, it started, it was written by William Gresham in 1946 from his experience during the Spanish Civil War of talking to a carnival worker. And it was just basically him just kind of like documenting like just the, like the behind the scene, how the sausage is made basically.
Right.
So he literally put that in a book, and then a year later, Tyrone Power buys the rights and makes it, into this movie. And at the time, I think it was like Sanic. It was one of those producers like at Fox. And, Tyrone Power wanted to do it originally because he wanted to get away. He was known for his like romance and swashbuckler like roles, and he wanted to do something serious. Like he wanted to play like this like, like grimy like character that was like, had like two sides almost. So the role that's played by Bradley Cooper is played by Tyrone Power. Stan Carlo. Oh my gosh, I forgot already. So that movie was made, and if you actually watch both movies, they're pretty close. You were saying that they're kind of, but the ending is different. The ending, they couldn't do the sad ending back then in 47.
So the ending that, I mean, we'll get into
spoilers, right? We can talk spoilers, right?
Absolutely. We'll get into Nightmare Alley, but the current incarnation of Nightmare Alley, the ending is bleak, to say the least. Well, that the other black and white one is more a triumphant ending.
Well, it still has Stan turning into a geek. Still has him like like that scene where like and I think in that version, he says, "Mister, I was made for it." And in Del Toro's version, it's "Mister, I was born for it." And it was just, I think they did "born" in the new one because it was sadder.
Right.
But so after that, he actually goes to the carnival that he started out in, and he actually meets up. Molly finds pity in him, and they kind of sort of, make amends. Right before he turns full geek.
So that was the ending of the original
one, yeah.
And this one is just...
But that was a studio demand, because Tyrone Power wanted that bleak ending, like the new one.
How does Del Toro get to this movie? Was he a fan of it, or did they come to him and be like, "Hey, what about this?"
I think it was always a dream project, but like you said, it was one of those things where kind of like you kind of have to have like your chips at the right place at the right time. And I'm sure, because I know his other dream projects is Lovecraft's at the Mountains of Madness. So I'm sure for him, after Shape of Water, he's like, I either do Mountains or I do Nightmare Alley, and he chose Nightmare Alley. And what's amazing, you said that it's the most Del Toro movie. And you're right, because most of Del Toro movies, the monsters are not the monsters are the humans.
Yeah.
So, it is the most monstery Del Toro movie. I mean, the movie's gorgeous. I saw it both in black and white. They're doing.
You saw the black and white one?
Yeah, I saw a black and white one.
Where are they doing it? At the
New Bev.
New Bev. Quentin's got a theater out here that only screens 35 millimeter prints.
Yeah.
So Guillermo must have requested that they spit out a 35 millimeter black and white print.
Well, yeah, and I think that was one of his requests, like, because there was a Q&A afterwards, and one of the things that he said was, like, I think the movie was originally like 3 hours and change, and then the studio said, like, okay, cut it down, but he said, okay, if I cut it down, then can you, I think finance or just kind of can you give me a black and white version?
Right. Because it's expensive.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It used to be very cheap back in the day to strike another print, right? As long as you had your negative, you could strike as many prints as possible, and a couple grand for a print. Now, when you create a print from a film that's, coming out of a digital medium, essentially it's one long effect shot. So you have to render the movie onto film and becomes like insanely costly. We didn't have a print on Tusk, because we were in the digital era and stuff.
Yeah.
Quentin wanted to screen it as part of Michael Park's week at the New Beverly.
Yeah.
And he was like, would you mind if I have them strike a print? And I was like, oh my God, go ahead. And especially when I saw the price tag, I was like, fucking better you and me. Yeah, fucking you pay for it. Go ahead.
That's awesome.
So wow, what was the black and white like? I mean, of course the original was in black and white. I saw the one I watched was beautiful, lush, color, muted, of course. But period film. For those, before we dive in, for those unfamiliar with the story, Nightmare Alley tells the tale of Carlisle.
Stan Carlisle. Yeah, just wanted to.
Stan Carlisle, who winds up working at a circus or a fair? Carnival.
Yeah. And
he's a drifter, right?
He's a drifter. He kind of starts out just kind of
intimated that he killed. More than intimated. Throughout the movie, you learn that he killed his father.
His father. And the art book is literally called the Rise and Fall of Stan Carlisle. So the movie is literally, you get to see this person who has good intentions, has that American dream, has but the movie also is basically painting the underbelly of the American dream, because I can see that happening, especially when you live out here in Hollywood, it's never enough, the next thing. And you're always going after filling that void. And, this is kind of that cautionary tale of yeah, man, you don't cross the line.
Stan goes beyond crossing the line. He picks up various carny trade while hanging out, and then he wants to make a run at doing a mesmerization act or a mind reading act.
Mental act.
A mentalist.
Yeah.
And so
and Tony Collette tells him that's fine, but never go into a spook show. Never cross the line. The spook show is basically when you're telling people oh yeah, your loved one's here, and we see the cause and effect of the bad thing of that, because then we see Mary Steenburgen's character killing herself at the end, because just so they can be with her son, because he says you'll be with your son when you pass away eventually. He's all right, well.
So that's what she meant is don't do the spook show.
Yeah, don't do the spook show. Just don't, because you're basically. You can see that's the beautiful thing about this movie, about Del Toro's movies, is the characters are never, unless they're they're a fascist, the one in Pan's Labyrinth, but the characters are never fully black and white. There's always a lot of gray, and you can see in Bradley Cooper's portrayal that he does kind of have good intentions. He does want to give people hope, but then mixed in with the greed, of making money, then it starts getting wishy-washy. But yeah, that's what she says, don't do the spook show, because that's when it starts getting. Because remember, there's a one scene where Tony Collette reads the crowd and tells the ladies oh, I can feel my brother's hand and shoulder, and then right after the show, she kind of has to tell her hey, no, it's part of the trick.
Yeah.
But Stan just kind of was goes full.
He goes with it, and to dire consequences later on. There is a sequence where he's talking to Mary Steenburgen, who's lost her kid, and saying oh yeah, the kid's here and he's communicating and he's telling you this, and it's a very generally speaking, the act that he has going with his are they married or no?
Yeah, she's married, but the thing is, she's married to like a big figure in the city, like to one of the judges. So, because you hear it on the radio as soon as it happens, like, you know, and right before that other character played by, man, I'm blanking, but the other guy that dies, the other rich guy, Bradley Cooper punches his brains out.
So he winds up with Rooney Mara, and they come up with this like elaborate code system.
Yeah.
In order for him to keep a blindfold on, and, you know, what am I holding? And based on the words he's able to say, and people are, ooh, it's fun parlor tricks. And then periodically, there are people who are like, you know, talk to the spirits. Is my brother here? And that's what the Tony Collette character, who works the carnival as well, was kind of telling him, like, don't get into that.
Yeah,
like, you're crossing the line. And I thought, when she was doing that, I was like, oh, you know, this Del Toro is going to be some spooky shit.
Yeah.
There's no supernatural in this movie.
Well, yeah, from I think what Guillermo said briefly after the Q&A, he said that they did shoot like this monster sequence, but it was a nightmare that Stan, but they cut it out.
Took it out.
Yeah.
It's normally, you know, there are monsters at play. There, you know, supernatural elements at work in Guillermo's flicks, but this is just greed, avarice, like the 7 deadly sins that kind of make men monsters.
Yeah, and and that's one of the things that I think he likes. He always says in a lot of his stuff is there's no such thing as a perfect human being. He always likes to say we are the most unperfect motherfuckers that that there are, and I think that's why he always makes like the fascist leader in Pan's Labyrinth, like, because there's like trying to go towards like that perfection that doesn't, it's like an illusion, so I feel like Stan is kind of in the same. It's just kind of sort of like, yeah, and when I get to this thing, and like everything will be fine, it just doesn't stop, it just keeps going and going.
There's a couple different movies at play in this movie.
Yeah. Because
it starts as like the Drifter movie, and then it becomes a carnival movie, and then you think, all right, we're going to be a carnival movie forever. And then it moves into high society, and then it moves into psychiatry.
Yeah.
Well, they introduce the Cate Blanchett character, who like starts getting into his head and his bed as well.
Yeah.
But she's unraveling him.
Yeah.
As much as he plays people,
and he's falling for it. So it's kind of like a double, like, because he kind of sort of like embarrasses her at that show. It's like, all right, motherfucker. I'm gonna get you.
She challenges him and kind of publicly by, don't. Yeah. She won't let the assistant say anything, describe it. She wants him to call it without any prompts or any help. Yeah. Because she thinks he's a fraud, but he manages to kind of escape by and embarrass her.
Yeah.
And I guess that's enough for her to be like, well, I'm going to destroy this motherfucker.
Yeah.
Because that's what slowly happens, like throughout the third act. Then all of a sudden you're in the midst of this film noir.
Yeah.
Kind of throwback.
And then, I mean, the way that she shot, like, I think that cinematographer Dan Lauston just got nominated. Just because
movies getting nominated for all sorts of awards. Just today got a costume nomination. Yeah. I bet you he winds up getting a DGA nomination, because this is a movie that, like, even though nobody seems to be talking about it in the mainstream. I mean, they will be as of February 1st once it's on HBO Max or whatever. But I think a lot of people in the industry are talking about it.
They're kind of going for it.
And because it's just, you're like, this is ballsy. You take a cast like that.
Yeah.
And a budget like that, and you make one of the bleakest fucking art house films that have ever been made.
But I mean, I think that's Del Toro's whole shtick. Is that he says that he has like the worst time being a pitchman, because all the stories he wants to tell. I mean, I don't know what Hellboy 3 would be about if it ever gets made, but I mean, spoiler alert, he dies in the comic.
Hellboy does.
Yeah, Hellboy does. Yeah,
and so that's what
he finally becomes the beast of the apocalypse. Like,
so we think that's might have been where he would have taken like the third one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because at the end of the second one, the bastard fucking cock teased everybody with a little epilogue at the end of the art book, and it wasn't in the movie. But if you got the art book, you're like, and Rasputin comes back, and all this. I was like, you son of a bitch! I want to see that movie right now. And yeah, so I mean, but then Mountains of Madness is about. It's basically The Thing, you know, a group of scientists out in the Arctic, and they all get killed. Only but one, and the one comes back and tells the story.
Tells the tale.
Yeah, so I mean, those are I you know, the stories. I think if Del Toro makes any other movies, here's my wish list. I want to see his version of Frankenstein.
Nice.
I want to see Mountains, and I want to see Hellboy 3. After that, I can die happy.
The wish list. I mean, I was trying to think back to Mimic. I guess they forced a happy ending on him there too.
Yeah. Well, he I think, you know, now that after Shape of Water, where he became like a little bit more well known, they finally released a director's cut.
Yeah, of Mimic. Yeah. He finally got some justice on it.
Yeah.
Where is he from?
Guadalajara, Mexico.
And where's that in relation to?
My Mexican
Baja,
my Mexican friends, please don't kill me. I think it's in relation. It's closer to Mexico City, which is in the center.
He's buddies with
the trio.
There's the three of them, and who's the guy? One guy who did the Revenant.
Right. Iñárritu.
And then who's the third guy?
Alfonso Cuarón.
Oh, Alfonso Cuarón.
Yeah.
Did they all know each other, or they're just like, oh, we're three filmmakers from the same country?
I think him and Cuarón actually went to school together.
Are you shitting me?
So that's a funny story, because like they the way they learned film is they basically got to do their version of the Twilight Zone growing up in Mexico, but they kind of just literally, because they always say like, yeah, it was like this shitty version of the Twilight Zone. I said, but it was a great learning.
Was it a TV show?
Yeah, it was called, I think, Hora Marcada, which is the marked time, you know. So
it was an anthology program.
Yeah. So he, and you know, Guillermo did a lot of things. Guillermo, I think, you know, it's funny. He's been very true to because the children's book that I wrote is about how it was inspired by a story that he would pee his bed, and like.
He's a bedwetter.
Yeah, because I guess let me set it up better. His brother had scared him from I guess it was like an episode of the Outer Limits that was called The Mutant, with like this guy with big eyes. Mm-hmm. So ever since then he started seeing, like, you know, he was scared of like the dark, and he started seeing monsters. He actually saw, I'm paraphrasing, but he actually saw like the fawn that it's in Pan's Labyrinth coming out of the shadows in his room. If I was a kid, I'd like be, you know,
shit yourself. Never mind, wet the bed.
So he basically, you know, like he was afraid to go to the bathroom, and that's why. So the story is really sweet, because he basically said to the monsters one night, like, if you let me go to the bathroom, I'll be your friend forever. So, you know, and that's kind of sort of been his promise, is like, you know, put monsters in movies. So
it's a beautiful little story.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's sweet.
So, oh man, I went off a tangent, and it was like related to what I wanted to say. Oh, so going back to Chronos, he literally, from doing all these kind of commercial works and things like that, he literally started his own special effects company in Mexico just so he could do Chronos. And as soon as Chronos was done, he shut it down. But he learned from all these different guys, like in the industry, like, you know, like I know Forey Ackerman was one of his heroes. Mm-hmm. Bob Burns, who has, like, you know, the original skeleton from King Kong. And
Forrest Ackerman is the guy who published Famous Monsters of Filmland. He was like the original fanboy. He was the original cave, you know, like the caveman in a room, and what was called the Acker Mansion. Yeah, Acker Mansion. And Guillermo learned from this artist, the special effects makeup artist called Dick Smith. Yeah, and he's the legend who worked on The Exorcist, I believe. Yep. Did all that amazing stuff, and yeah. So, you know, I think Guillermo's been very true to his, you know, to his deal with the monsters. Yeah. In Cate Blanchett shows up, shifts the movie into this film noir thing. And there's a scam, one last scam that they're running on a very wealthy, higher up muckety muck played by Richard Farnsworth, maybe? Richard Jenkins, sorry. Yeah. The guy who was in Shape of Water and got nominated and stuff. Yeah. he wants Bradley Cooper to communicate with his dead wife.
Dead girl, like an ex-flame.
Ex-flame.
Yeah, who like it is hinted at that she had an abortion. Like he forced her to have an abortion. That's why she's kind of like painted in blood, like in that area down there, and stuff like that. So, so he kind of has this regret. But then you find out that the character has been mean, not just to that woman.
Oh, it's crazy. He has.
Women.
Well, I mean, it's the scam that Bradley Cooper has Rooney Mara showing up in the snowy graveyard because Richard Jenkins is getting tired. He's like, I think you're a fraud. You're a charlatan. Like, you better show me proof that she's here and that you're talking to her. And
yeah.
So he organizes it, sets it up that it's later at night. They're by the grave, and Rooney's going to come in the outfit, her hair done, like the picture image drawing of this dead girl. And she's got blood kind of in down below the waist and stuff. And he's meant to see her from a distance and be so scared, and then she would disappear again.
Right, but like like nothing goes to plan. And the guy,
oh no, he goes and grabs her, and then he finds out that she's real, and then he sees that it's not her, and then he realizes he's being played, and instantly fucking turns. And you learned right before she showed up, as he was talking to Bradley Cooper, rambling, you find out that he's a monster. He's probably killed many fucking women. And suddenly Bradley Cooper's, it's too late to pull back with what's going on, and then everything goes foul, and they wind up killing him, right?
Yeah, he's like, because in the book version, he doesn't kill him. But he goes through a whole period where they're basically making his life miserable. They're chasing him. So in the movie version, I think just to kind of make it, simple and clean, they just fucking, like, you're dying, bro. So
out he goes, and then they go running, and
his bodyguard gets run over, like, really. Oh man, that's the one thing I will say about Guillermo's movies. Like, as much as I'm a huge fan and I look forward to them, that some of the death scenes are fucking brutal. Like, and I just, like, it takes me a couple of times watching it to just, like, I wince a couple of times and that comes from him growing, like, just the reality of growing up in Mexico, just seeing dead bodies all the time. Like, just
I guess you're right. I hadn't thought about that.
Brutality. I mean, even me growing up in Ecuador, like, there was, like, newspapers, like, with dead bodies, like, like, and nudity, like, right there, so
it's got to show up in the work then.
Yeah, so I mean, it's part of the culture. Latin America, man, where it's weird. But one of the things that I appreciate, and I always kind of relate to Guillermo's work, is, like, the paranormal and things like that are not things that are like, like, ooh, it's part of the culture. It's like, like, oh, I was talking to my dead grandmother last night. Like, oh, what did she say? That's great. You say that to somebody here, you're like, oh, you're fucking crazy.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you got 5150, this motherfucker.
Yeah. So,
what a beautiful thought. You're right, man. That's true. There's like an acceptance of spirituality in the culture that, like, here is just like, what, are you nuts? But there's something magical about that. The idea of, like, death sucks, but, like, here it's like death's the end, and but you still have the memories. But I would much rather be like, I spoke to my grandmother, and live in that world where people see that as pragmatic, practical, and not weird at all. Like, oh, of course, like, if people commune with spirits. Kate Blanchett, Rooney Mara goes away from him. Bradley Cooper, she's had enough. Bradley Cooper goes to get a pile of money from Kate Blanchett because she was the one that fed him the information. Yeah,
we should also set up that the reason that they kind of sort of, like, teamed up, and the reason why he kind of started doing these spook shows, because he had all this freaking information because she recorded the sessions.
All the sessions that she had with people. So he was able to give this guy enough juicy, enticing details.
Yeah, ammunition.
So he comes back to collect the cash, and she, in a very film noir fashion, turns on him with a fucking gun and tries to kill him.
Changes all the bills to ones.
To ones, yeah. He opens it up and he's like, "What is this?" Yeah. And she's just cold-hearted killer at heart.
And of course, Del Toro, she just doesn't shoot him. She shoots him, and he has like a gory ear.
Oh, it's fucking so nasty, man. Shot
geez.
like half his ear off and shit.
Yeah.
He goes, he gets away and goes running and winds up living under bridges and jumping trains and stops looking like clean-cut Bradley Cooper.
Yeah.
And more like a hobo. Until ultimately he winds up at a carnival.
Yeah.
Another carnival.
Yeah, and he goes full circle. And then what's crazy, and I just...
There's a show. We didn't even get the guy, his dude. There's a beautiful scene at the top where, when Bradley Cooper first comes to the carnival, he sits down with Willem Dafoe. Mm-hmm. And Willem Dafoe is explaining how carnivals run and more importantly, like they got a geek. And how they keep the geek under control. Geek, for those that are like, what is that? Other than like, I'm a film geek. True meaning of the term geek, the circus term or the carnival term is you bite the head off of a live chicken or a live animal, but predominantly chicken. Mm-hmm. So you're this man beast they bill you as, covered in filth and, barely human. And they'll throw a live chicken at you and you'll bite its head off. And people were paying like a nickel or whatever the fuck to watch that because, just like today, people love to watch fucking reality TV.
Oh my God, yeah.
Back then, they were like, that was our Kardashians. This motherfucker would bite a chicken's head off and it was nuts. And that was our Friday night. But, traditionally, I always assumed that the geek in the circus was like there willingly, same as the fat lady, same as the hairy guy. Yeah. And, it was just like, well, that's his thing.
Part of the show.
Yeah. And also like when the show's done, he's like, hey man, so what are we doing tonight?
How's it going, guys?
Yeah, exactly. Here he's depicted as practically a fucking human trafficked prisoner who is there trapped essentially. And like is the one geek is moaning and trying to, like not escape, but like,
yeah,
he wants to die. It looks like, and then Bradley Cooper is told like not to interact with him and stuff. Yeah. They treat this guy like an animal, and Willem Dafoe tells him like, it's not a how you make a geek. It's real simple.
Yeah,
they come to you looking for a job, and you say you ain't got nothing, and then you say, well, wait a second. You give them a drink, and in that drink maybe there's a little something or whatever the fuck. Something that gets them real hooked to it so that they're going to need that drink even more. But you're already dealing with addicts, he says. And then, you go like, you ain't got no work. Oh, but there is one thing, temporarily. We lost our geek. You can do it for like a few days and then, get you back on your feet and then you can do something else. And
yeah.
So they're like, okay. And slowly they back into it. And before they know it, they're fucking trapped human animals in a cage. Yeah. So Willem Dafoe literally tells us this in the first 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
Essentially telegraphs the end of the movie. But you don't think about it. Like I never once while he was describing it I'm a guy who writes movies. Never once was I like, this is going to come back at the end.
Yeah.
And there he is, Bradley Cooper at the very end of the movie looking disheveled and very geekish and talking to another carnival, a guy runs a carnival played by what's his fuck?
The guys who's every Coen brother.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
but he's an amazing
wonderful actor.
But what's crazy is that baby is in the scene, so it's almost like Enoch, because isn't Enoch in the Bible supposed to be like the knowledge of God? So it's almost like Willem Dafoe even says like, its eye follows you. So it's almost like full circle.
Because he had in Willem Dafoe's office, he has this like human baby in a jar. It died,
which is very Del Toro thing. If you've seen Devil's Backbone and a bunch of his other movies, he loves
dead babies in a jar. But it appears again in this the carnival guy's office at the end. He's like, oh, I bought it from an old carnival, which presumably was the one that Willem Dafoe was running. And so Bradley Cooper's in real bad shape and he offers him a drink and he's like, I ain't got any work for you. And he's like, come to think of it, he's like, there is a position. Yeah, we just lost our geek. And Bradley Cooper
It's
looks
temporary.
up
It's temporary.
and he realizes, he sees it
Yeah.
like, and remembers, and he's now gone full circle. And like Chogrin said before, it hauntingly, he starts chuckling with real fucking bad teeth and looking real terrible and shit. And what does he say? He goes, "Mister,
I was born for it."
I was born for it." Because he's like, "Do you think you can do that?" He goes, "Mister, I was born for it."
And it's like this.
Credits.
Oh, dude. And it's like.
That's the end of the fucking picture.
Yeah.
I could not fucking believe it. We were like, I turned to my wife and I was like, "Holy shit."
Fuck. Yeah.
To be fair, I was like, "Look, that's the movie I came to see. I came to see what happens next. Show me the Bradley Cooper is the geek movie and shit." But we already watched it.
Yeah.
Essentially, that was the thing. And there were moments when he was interacting with the geek that I was like, oh, I wonder if that's,
Yeah.
beyond, you thought it would be a running storyline, but it wrapped up within the first 15 or 20.
Yeah.
And then you never thought about it again until that moment, until he was in that guy's office and you're like, oh shit. Oh shit. He put him back where he started.
We also see the flashback of how, because they set up the character kind of sort of like, oh, this guy's kind of reinventing himself, restarting his life. But then we see the flashback of him like basically killing his father. You're like, oh, this motherfucker's been ruthless like
from the start,
from the get go.
Yeah.
And also, I just realized too the parallel of the relationship between Toni Collette and David. What's his last name? Who plays Pete? Who plays where Stan gets he steals all his tricks.
He steals all the stuff.
But their relationship, if you look about
David Strathairn.
Yeah, yes. Their relationship is kind of a preview of what happens with him and Molly.
Yeah, that's true.
Because Toni Collette's like, poor Pete, breaks my heart.
Yeah.
So.
It's a dark fucking picture, kids. Like, it's
amazing.
It's amazing. But I mean, like, thankfully, man, we're in the era of the pandemic kind of still.
Yeah.
Because then you could always be like, well, like fucking people aren't going out to the movies, and that's why this movie, didn't find the audience the way it should have. It's going to, trust me. It just didn't at the box office. But even in pre-pandemic times,
yeah,
could you imagine? You're like, let's go see Nightmare Alley. Get the popcorn. Holy shit. By the end of the movie, you just want to fucking put a gun in your mouth. It is such a haunting dark picture. Insanely well made. And I could not fucking take my eyes off of it.
Yeah.
But like, still, I was, I mean, of course, the answer to the question, who is this movie for, is anybody who appreciates great filmmaking.
Yeah.
That being said, remove that. Who is this movie for? You know what I'm saying? Like, who is going like, I know what'll cheer people up.
Time to put in my feel good movie. It's like people that like watch Requiem for a Dream. I'm like, hey man, good for you.
Or like not just that watch Requiem for a Dream. They're like, oh, that's my favorite movie. Like I watch it on repeat, and it's like, how the fuck can you like?
Yeah,
God, it was tough to get through Ass to Ass once. I don't know that I ever need to go see that again before I hit the grave and shit like that. I could
never watch Labyrinth the same way ever again.
That's so true. Oh my god. The Goblin King indeed.
I highly recommend if people, because the thing is like I feel bad as a Guillermo fan. I didn't go to see it immediately, pandemic and everything. But I'm glad that I saw it in black and white first and then in color, because it's almost, I don't want to say they're two different movies, but man, they definitely, I think it's because I was watching also for the first time, but I think the black and white just felt more like even more bleak. Right. So it was just gorgeous. Like that scene at the beginning where he burns the house and the flames are literally white. Like it's just like so beautiful to look at. And then the normal edition version is gorgeous, especially all the carnival stuff. Like, did you notice like when it's basically when he goes inside that tent. What's cool, I found out in the Q&A, is that tent scene, they actually shot like inside, like, I mean, it's not like, I don't know why I'm acting like it's a surprise, but it's so cool that they actually had like this like fan, like making it look like it was like a storm. Like
breathing in and out.
But it's so cool to see like it's basically Stan going into the depths of hell, because he goes through the mouth of the devil.
Yeah, shit.
And then on the other side is like the skull and all that stuff. So eye protein.
That's true, man.
All that
there's
stuff.
a guy who's working, who's putting in. I mean, I guess you can't call them Easter eggs. It's just part of the composition of the shot. It's like not him going, I'm going to hide something. He's like, it's right in plain sight. Open your fucking eyes.
Did you see Crimson Peak?
Yeah. Oh my God. Eon's back.
Yeah. Crimson Peak, there's the symbolism of the one girl, the pure girl being the butterfly and the other girl being the moth. And there's literally a shot when they're about to have a confrontation. There's a jar in the background of a moth eating a butterfly. So stuff like that, you're like, oh, holy shit. You know, have you seen Chronos?
Way back in like 94. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I you could tell like a lot of like the religious aspects of it. Like, you know, there's this one line in the movie, I'm probably not going to say it right, but he's like, cause the whole movie is about like Del Toro's take on vampirism and how basically this one sick guy who's lost all his organs because he has cancer is basically trying to find immortality. So there's this little device that has a bug in it. There's a lot of insect stuff in all his movies, but in this movie it's like this little bug that lives inside a device that basically once you hook it up to yourself, it like but you have to then consume human blood to, you know. But anyways, going back to it, there's a guy who wants the device, and he says like, who's to say Jesus wasn't an insect? The insects are the most like, you know, perfect creatures in the animal kingdom. You know, I just love that line. It's great. But anyways,
where are you on Shape of Water?
Oh, I love it, and it's funny. It's funny because I think he wanted
such a beautiful movie.
Oh, it's gorgeous, and I think he originally wanted to do that movie in black and white. So that's why I'm like, it doesn't surprise me to see that, you know, he did this Nightmare Alley.
That he did Nightmare Alley, did a version.
I mean, Universal was smart. They would just be like, hey, you want a monster universe? Give it to Del Toro.
Right?
Jesus. I mean,
like why they were fucking around going like, let's have, you know, these highbrow Tony folks, just give them all to him. He seems to like all those characters. He's done his versions of all of them to some degree, with the exception of Frankenstein.
He's done the vampire. He's done the creature. And oh my God, dude, I would love to, because I know he said that he wants Doug Jones to play the creature.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So, and Frankenstein's one of my all-time favorite.
I guess it'd be, you know what, like if they gave him the Universal monsters, it'd be kind of redundant at this point.
Yeah.
Except for Frankenstein, if they were like, that's like, give him that one, the granddaddy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and there's actually the best version of Frankenstein I've ever seen is played by Luke Goss. Is the BBC one that's like 4 hours long, and Luke Goss is also a Del Toro alumni. He played the Reaper Prince in Blade 2, and then he played the Prince again in Hellboy 2.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
Fucking look at you, man! Fucking deep cuts.
That's why I came here.
Yeah, I know. You came loaded for bear. It was Chogrin had texted me. He's like, "Hey man, I've been listening to Film School Fridays," and he's like, if you ever want to do Guillermo del Toro, I was like, I do, as a matter of fact. I would love to talk about Nightmare Alley.
Yeah.
February 1st, I believe it is. It's going to be on HBO Max, kids. And, you know, I think probably before that or around that time, it'll be transactional, or if it isn't already, or I doubt it is. It will be soon. So, like, you can check it out on iTunes or whatever the fuck. But do check it out. Just don't like base your weekend on it. You know, just don't be like, this is my Saturday night. Make it your Saturday afternoon, because you're going to need a few hours afterwards to digest and clean your soul. Because it is a movie about human darkness, and is there a single good character, like a moral character? I guess Rooney comes close, but even she's a fucking liar.
Ron Perlman. He tried to save Rooney Mara.
I guess, yeah. I guess there's a purity there of sorts. Yeah, man, it's quite a motion picture, and I don't want that to sound like facetious or something where it's like, oh, you can't say nothing nice about it. I can say plenty nice about it, and I think I have, but I can't think of another movie that has stuck with me as much as that movie stuck with me this year.
Yeah.
So even though it didn't like take the box office by storm, I can see it backdooring into all the awards this year. You know, I'm not saying it's going to win, but I think you're going to see this movie and him nominated a lot more. I think right now, like I said today, I believe it, like there was a costuming award that it got nominated for, and there was a production design award. It just got nominated for it. So I think you're going to see it as a contender coming up. Are they still doing like 10 fucking movies for Best Picture?
I don't know.
If they are, this is definitely.
I stopped watching a long
nods.
time ago, and actually, when Guillermo won that one year, I was like, "Oh,
yeah, oh shit! Quick, turn it on."
yeah,
and now turn it back off.
So yeah,
yeah. There's if they're still doing 10 fucking movies, there's no way this does not get nominated. A, he's an alumnus, who's won before, but B, this movie like really. It does stand out. It's an auteur film. Like you can see the filmmaker all over it, for heaven's sakes. And it also has a Hollywood pedigree. Like the movie's been done before, and Hollywood loves a remake.
Yeah,
I could see him like surprising a bunch of people. Like more people are about to interact with this movie than have for the last month or something like that.
If anything, I'm not religious, but like this is almost as good as going to church, and because you feel after the movie, you're like, man, I'm not gonna fucking sin.
Yeah,
like I'm gonna be a good person.
Yeah, you try to clean up your fucking act. Instantly, you're just like, look, how do I avoid sitting in some dude's fucking office with him offering me a drink, going like, it's temporary. It's a temporary job biting chickens' heads off.
Yeah.
Fall down the path of Nightmare Alley, kids, as it comes your way the next week on home video and HBO Max and stuff.
I think it's playing the black and white is playing in select theaters now. It was in LA for a while, but now it's going to be going out into different cities. So if you can catch it in black and white, catch it in black and white.
The excellent fucking tip there, man, and in a theater no less.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll do the black and white version like.
Yeah,
home video probably like a month later.
Part of me is like, are they going to release it as a special feature, or are going to do a whole like a different release? I'll buy both.
I say fuck them. I'm going to take my TV. I'm going to turn the color down to black and white, and I'm just going to watch that fucker in black and white my way.
Yeah.
The movie, kids, is Nightmare Alley. The filmmaker is the great Guillermo del Toro, man. And here talking about it have been me, your student Kevin Smith. And Chogrin, fuck, you brought a lot of fucking Guillermo del Toro GDT information.
I had to make it worth your time, man. So
it was well worth the fucking time. Where can they interact with your shit and fuck with your shit?
Everything on social media, Chogrin, website is chogrin.com. Currently, Your Toy will be available soon. The Guru series. There's one of Guillermo called Guru del Toro. There's I have a bilingual children's book called Kid del Toro. And the Guru SQ and the Mallrats will be coming out later this year. As I was telling Kelly before we started the podcast, I just turned 37. This is my Kevin Smith year.
He's absolutely right. And the fucking thing he's working on right now and almost done with is the View Askew card for Clerks 3.
Oh my gosh! All right, well,
he redid the clown, and he was like, do you have a logo for the movie yet? And I was like, no. You want to do it? And it came together within 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, I won't believe it until I see it.
We're mixing the movie now. So I think I see it was today, Wednesday or Tuesday?
Yeah, today's Wednesday.
Today's Wednesday. So tomorrow I see playback of reels like 1 through 4. That reel with the logos and stuff is reel 0. So we got a few more days. But space is being held for it already.
Since you set it up, I want to give a shout out to my buddies over at Matt CG.
Who's doing it? What is it called? The company?
Matt CG. They're in Quito, Ecuador. It's a studio that I'm actually working with. They animated my first short film that I wrote and directed called Lucky Brave Sunshine.
Fucking hey, are you done with it?
We will be done with it because we got to start submitting it to festivals in February.
Is that when the February is the submission date?
Yeah, the big one is Annecy in France. So
how long is the short?
7 minutes, 8 minutes with credits.
And it's like CG?
It's all CG, yeah. It's based on my own childhood stuff, and it's basically a space western coming of age.
And you drew it in 2D and then handed it to somebody and said, make this 3D? Or did you do it? Did you have... How does that work?
I knew that working in industry and making connections and stuff with people, I know that I always wanted to kind of go back to my roots and give back in a way, or work with, talent, because, a lot of places around the world are not LA, so I saw this one short called Afterwork, done by this studio, and I saw they were from Ecuador, and I was like, I actually didn't have an idea at the time for a short, but I was like, I'll make one just to work with these guys. And my co-director, his name is Ichi Aguilar, and he's kind of been, also a great mentor, and I've learned a lot from him. Even though I've worked in the animation industry for the last 10 years, writing and directing your own thing is a completely different beast. So I've learned a lot, and looking forward to making more shit. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. And
fucking A, man. He's on fire, kids. The name is Chogrin, and you can find where do you send people?
Chogrin.com and Instagram, all social media, just Chogrin, Chogrin.
Chogrin, do you tell him you have a secret identity or no?
Oh yeah, I mean, I can say that my name it comes from 2 words. So I will leave it there.
Thank you for coming on, talking up the great GDT, ladies and gentlemen, Guillermo del Toro. That is Film School Fridays. I don't even know how I sign these things off. Something about like maybe the bell. Class dismissed. But wait, I should. We should say our names. For Film School Fridays, I'm Kevin Smith.
I'm Chogrin.
Class dismissed. There you go.
This has been a Smodco Internet production. Sip. Only at smodcast.com.
This is the cat. Greetings, everybody, and welcome to the AKA Ask Kev Anything. Every saga has a 10-year anniversary, ladies and gentlemen, and this is what happens when Jay and Silent Bob get old. I'm Kevin Smith. Cheers,